Cheeky, flashy, gallus. So as you're probably well aware at this point, I'm posting all of the kind of production process of Arcade and Cross documentary, just across all the various outlets that I've got, just because I think it's interesting to again get into the mind of a creative process. Late last year, that started off as a Ravie Davie documentary, and we pitched it to the class, and we had to submit a kind of pitch deck, a pitch presentation. This is all of the information and research and things that myself, Ryan, Rory, Bailey, and Callum all put into our Ravie Davie documentary, which did quite quickly change to being about Caden Cross. So we will have the kind of, this is the setup, and you'll get the reflective, us looking back on the production at the end of everything, I suppose. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the Ravie Davie pitch deck. Ryan Robertson, director, proposal. This documentary explores identity and redemption through Scottish professional wrestler Ravie Davie by looking into the man behind the character in David McCallum, and how his upbringing caused him to invest his time in bringing about change in Govan by giving its youth both a mentor and a safe haven in the Church of Wrestling School. It'll be betraying the story of how Govan shaped David McCallum into the persona and community champion Ravie Davie, and how he is now given back to his home. It is a story of redemption through wrestling, from gang violence to fake violence, whilst attempting to peel back the mask of Ravie Davie and meet David, the dad, the coach, the Govan-raised man beneath. Wrestling has always been a passion of mine. I come from Ned culture, not like full-on Ned lifestyle or gangs, but the new kind of sort of neo-Neds that cut about, and I often think that if I was still at that stage, I'd have been in David's school immediately. I respect greatly what he's doing, and I've looked up to him since I met him at a wrestling show when I was just getting started 9 years, when he was just getting started, 9 years ago, fucking hell, right. I'm to direct this film. Documentary directing is something I've done a fair few times, and I find the most fulfilment from. I have a solid knowledge of the hows in relation to documentary production, and I'm skillful enough in each of the other roles if my crew needs help or has any questions. I have my preferred ways of working, and I know my areas for improvement and assets. I often go out of my way to bring out the best in my crew, and I'm very much a doer. I will insist on regular meetings and communication from the crew, etc. Ultimately, this is a passion project of mine and something I've wanted to do for a few years now. We then have Callum, the cinematographer's spiel. For this module, the project I'll be working on is a documentary short film focusing on the Glaswegian wrestler David McCallum, the man behind the persona of Ravie Davie, and we will work to offer an insight into both his wrestling character and his own life experiences, as well as his work on the community around him. The documentary will explore his personal connection to wrestling and the creation of his wrestling character, as well as the inception of his own youth wrestling school. I'm involved in this project as I want to work with the people that I have previously not collaborated with part of the course. I also believe the topic of the documentary will be interesting to work on as part of this group. I believe the fact the film looks to focus on both Ravie Davie and the man behind the character will be a challenging to create and work on. If this project goes into production, I'll take on the role of cinematographer. I have previously not had much experience as part of the course working on camera, therefore I want to strengthen this skill whilst working as part of the project. I'll aim to work closely with the director, making sure his vision in the film is taken into account during shooting, as well as to making sure enough footage is filmed and is of high quality. I also aim to aid my other project members with their roles, helping with aspects such as editing during post-production. This is something I've previously done and enjoy, and believe will be helpful in the overall final stages of post-production. Bailey O'Donnell, project proposal. For my group's short film, we decided as a team we would prefer to do a documentary short rather than making a fictional film, due to our group mutually agreeing that a documentary would be more interesting and would possibly be easier for the project to keep our interest and attention for the year that we will be working on the film. We brainstormed different ideas, but ultimately landed on an idea pitched with Ryan about a Scottish wrestler called Ravie Davie, aka the Fresh Prince of Drummoy Square. Davie is a Scottish pro wrestler from Govan. He holds many different wrestling events for fans to come to attend, and that's just the surface. David, also teaches wrestling to children in his wrestling school, Glasgow School of Wrestling. He teaches these children and teens not just to help them pursue their interests and allow them to do some exercise, but also to keep him off the streets and away from gang violence, to keep them off the streets as well, so they don't fall into the life that David did when he was a young man. As you can see from all that is mentioned here, there's a lot within this documentary that can be explored, and frankly with a great team that will create a great documentary with all of us choosing roles. I decided to take on the producer role, so I'll be in charge of creating schedules to ensure the film runs smoothly and everyone knows when to be where, creating budgets so that everyone is aware of the money we need to put down. Will just be travel and food. Health and safety assessments, and ensuring that our director's vision is executed well and that the film runs smoothly without any major issues occurring in the next year. Oh Bailey, you didn't know. You didn't know. We've now got Rory editing thing. Oh Ryan, you've lost all formalities there. Rory's editing spiel. The project will be a documentary based around professional wrestler based in Govan, David McCallum, a former gang member who goes by the name Ravie Davie in the ring. The project will also focus on his wrestling school based in a chapel in Govan, known as the Church of Wrestling. The documentary will focus on how McCallum teaches young people the art of professional wrestling as a way to keep young people off the streets and prevent them from joining gangs and falling into a life of crime, a life that McCallum once had when he was young. I'm excited to be a part of this project because I've been a lifelong fan of professional wrestling and I am appreciative and respectful of the artwork of professional wrestling, and I am excited to showcase how the graft of professional wrestling can be a working mechanism to keep young people off the streets and therefore lead a better life away from criminal activity. I am also excited to illustrate the importance of wrestling to professional wrestling fans and how it can be seen as both an escape and an inspiration for fans due to the multiple generations of various different professional wrestlers. My role in the production next trimester will be the role of the editor. I'll bring all of the footage shot on the location for the documentary to live through my vision, and I'll be working with the entire team to allow them to bring their input into the edit and point out things that I may not see, and ultimately create the best documentary possible for the project. And we will be able to put across the message of our documentary to its fullest effect and highlight the work of McCallum at his wrestling school. Research and Development Report Director Ryan Robertson. As the director of this project, I've been watching various documentaries and doing significant amounts of research into Ravie Davie. We as a group have been narrowing down our focus for the documentary down to a few themes and styles, whilst keeping it open to allow all of us to go with the flow. Something I wanted to do as this project's director was to just shoot a few short documentaries outside of the project with the crew to grow more of an understanding of each other's work styles and craft our style as a group. In this report, I'll be going into detail on 3 pieces of research that I've done. One section into Ravie Davie, one section into the documentary filmmaker Kenny Johnson, and another into a documentary I've drawn some inspiration from. I've been watching and listening to countless podcasts and reading every article I can find related to Ravie Davie. I've been taking notes and using these notes to build a timeline of events for David's life, and within that formulating questions, communicating important parts of the story to my crew. The Miles Affit podcast was a fun one to watch. Learned a lot about Ravie Davie from this. I've also been following his 10 Years In podcast for a while. The SWM podcast gave insight into the wrestler Ravie Davie, whereas the Objects podcast by Who Cares Scotland gave more insight to the person David McCallum. These are a selection I've watched whilst and the notebook. Sorry, these are a selection I've watched and notebooked at the time of writing, including the portfolio will be a complete list of articles and videos I watched as well as my notes related to each. I have also been watching so many Ravie Davie matches to see his moves so we can identify the best to film, as well as keeping up to date with David throughout social media. One of the big things I got from the podcast and interviews I've seen is David's confidence. He never handles being put on the spot well in interviews. He likes to be in control of his own comfort zone in relation to answers. This will likely inform how we go about interviewing David. Often David, if he's not feeling a question, will give an in-character answer to regain his confidence, it would seem. These are small things I picked up that we will use to help craft our interview to the best possible interview possible to keep David at ease. I've been watching some older documentaries by Kenny Johnson on American independent professional wrestling stars in the mid-2010s. They range in style, adapting this to suit the persona of the subject, but each follow the individual and address the real person beneath. Adam Cole's a bad guy, not really. Making MGF, Mike Parrow and Eddie Kingston are all documentaries I feel like as a director I can draw something from. Firstly, the scale and aesthetic to these documentaries is something achievable to us. These wrestlers are about on par at the time as to where Davie is to Scotland now. The matches seen in the documentaries are all in local schools and sports halls for the most part, much like CPW footage we will be getting. The Mike Parrow documentary is one man telling a story with images and B-roll edited on top. Adam Cole is talking openly about his character and the blend of who he really is with the exaggerated bad guy version of that, whilst intercutting footage of him shows. The MJF documentary explores the idea that MJF, the person, has got so into the character forms more of who he is than informing the character. And the Eddie Kingston documentary is 7 minutes, and it's a 7-minute talking head of Eddie Kingston telling a really emotional, gripping story in a believable and engaging way. These films are all very different due to the subjects covered, but done so similar and achievable ways for us to draw inspiration from. What I like about these films is how they have the wrestler tell a story throughout. The visuals and the cinematic language, however, is something we will have to look elsewhere to draw on. The British Wrestlers of Ice documentary that predates Dark Side of the Ring, it follows Grado, a wrestler who has a similar presence to Ravie Davie in that they are an inspirational, comedic individual who fulfilled their dreams of wrestling. What I love about this film is its chaotic nature of the visual sequences involving really quick cuts. There's a section dedicated to a team called the Bucky Boys, and recreating something like that for Ravie Davie's introduction I think would be very cool, as well as at the end with a match. I think you could do some fun things with sound here, as well as having loud noises and cheering and music, moments of silence, the crowd watching on, and Ravie Davie looking at the crowd. The British wrestler is a great style and edit and reference to have. Combining this with the way Kenny Johnson films told stories, I think could result in something special, but plenty more research to be done. As cinematographer for this project, I've been working on researching how I want the overall visual representation style and tone of our documentary to look by researching several different similarly styled documentary films. My role required me to work on the overall visual aspect, style and tone of the film, and therefore I have drawn inspiration from other similar styled documentaries and films in preparation. One such documentary is Insane Fight Club 2, BBC 2015, which follows a group of aspiring wrestlers in Glasgow as they look to gain recognition through the city through fighting, promotions and other public stunts. Not only is the subject of this the same as our project, as both focus on Glasgow-based wrestling scene, but its overall style is similar to how I vision our project turning out. The film is mainly observational, focused on both the wrestlers' characters and activities within the wrestling community, as well as aspects of their everyday normal life around the city of Glasgow when they are not in character. The framing of the subjects of this documentary, along with the focus on both them as well as the environment around them, aided me in envisioning how I want our own documentary to look and how we want to focus on both the subject of our project, Ravie Davie as a person, as well as the surroundings, in the cases being the youth wrestling school he runs and the town of Govan, the place where he lives. It also offered good insight into the contrast between the wrestler's character and the real person. This is another thing we aim to highlight in our documentary, the character of Ravie Davie as well as the man behind the character, and show the differences between the two. Another example is Zidane, a 21st century portrait, 2006, an experimental film that focuses entirely on the footballer Zinedine Zidane during his infamous final match, offering nothing much in terms of narrative and only certain things on his activities in the pitch. The observational factor in this film has aided me in most deciding how to highlight our own film, with it being the most important factor overall, and the Zidane film gave me good insight on how we can effectively frame Ravie Davie to keep the audience's focus on him throughout. Outside of the documentaries, I looked into the film The Wrestler to gain an idea of how to frame and style the wrestling aspects of our project. As someone who does not follow the sport, we aim to film several shots of Ravie Davie in the wrestling ring, and this film is a great example of how we can visually frame these moments. For our documentary, that was Callum's spiel on cinematography. Quick pause to have a sip of water. Oh, lovely water we're having here. Bailey O'Donnell research document. For the documentary short film, I've decided to tackle the role of producer, mainly because I haven't had the opportunity to do that role in the past. However, I know very little about the role, and even less with what a producer's tasks are when specifically looking at a documentary. To discover more, I took the goal to discover from an article written in Voice 123 Voice Talks that really delves into the importance of producers and explains what the role may entail for people who just wish to be a producer and for people like me that need to learn more about the role. In the article, they highlight 3 main steps in order to be a successful producer. The first step is pitching the idea for the film. Well, we haven't done the pitches quite yet. My group has been preparing for a practice pitch in which we have all chipped into the pitch, with my main jobs being to make sure the pitch is visually appealing and contains all of the necessary information about the project. Secondly, the article discusses securing funding, contracts and budgets. Thankfully for our film, the budget will be low, as our only real expense will be travel up to Govan, which will cost around £12 per person, so all unlikely we're looking at a total of £96 or about £24 per person. As for contracts, we've had communication with Davie about the film and has agreed, however we still haven't sent him over any official documents to sign yet. Thirdly, the article discusses location scouting and production logistics, is something which I've started to explore for the film. We already know that our main location will be inside of Davie's Church of Wrestling, but for other locations I'd like to gather shots of Govan, as I feel the story of Davie can't have happened in most other places. I've yet to take a journey and look up, but just looking around Google Maps, I've spotted a few places that could work for a B-roll, or perhaps Davie could talk about and link to his life. The final 3 aspects of producing that the article delves into is the importance of the producer overseeing the post-production process and how a producer is responsible for making sure that the technical aspects of the production are all correct so that the production runs smoothly and efficiently. Lastly, the article discusses the skills that are needed to be a producer, and I think it's important I either recognise the skills I need to try and make up for all the ones I may lack. The articles list skills such as creativity, time management and flexibility, all of which are skills I believe I have. When looking at all of this, there are some aspects that surprised me, such as how involved the producer really is, and there are some things that I already knew about, but with the new knowledge in combination with what I already knew, I believe that will help me better understand my role to help ensure all stages creating the film will run smoothly and ensure we have a good final product that we as a team will be proud of. Rory's wee spiel. The research I've done individually related to my own role is watching previous documentaries around the subject of David McCallum and footage of the location my team will be filming in order to help me create a vision for the style and the edit I want for the documentary that my team I will be creating and watching footage of David McCallum and his wrestling persona Ravie Davie to get a better understanding of basically the feel of the character that McCallum portrays inside the ring, and to see how he acts in the ring and the kind of other characters he associates himself with, to help me get ideas for the tone of the film. I've also researched David McCallum various websites on his progress of constructing the Church of Wrestling with his partner, getting a better idea how much work McCallum's put in to helping the community and Govan by constructing a space for learning the practical art of professional wrestling for the youth of Govan. Throughout the research, I've realised more how to portray David McCallum in the documentary, in the editing process to portray David McCallum as a community hero and as a positive influence and role model for the youths of the local area in Govan, and how he is a mentor to the younger generation on how to keep out of gangs and criminal activity that is prominent in that area. The development of my project has been steady and informing. My team reached out to David McCallum through emails and we asked if he wanted to be part of the documentary, which he responded that he agreed to be the subject of the documentary. We continued to stay in touch with David McCallum through emails in which he informed us that he would be in Japan wrestling for all of November. We understood this situation, but just McCallum being in Japan for all of November, we couldn't afford to get footage of him for our teaser. Instead, we'd be using archive footage, which would turn out still effective enough to set the kind of teaser tone for our documentary with David McCallum. We've met up frequently as a group to discuss the documentary. We've discussed together the roles we've taken on in the documentary. We've watched footage together of David McCallum's wrestling career as Ravie Davie to get a better understanding of David McCallum's in-ring work, which we have discussed through the style and fundamentals of our documentary and what is best for our documentary in every department that will construct our documentary. And we have all... where am I? Sorry, I've lost where I am. And we have all come to a clear idea of what we want our documentary to be about, a clear understanding of what we want our documentary to look like. We have also discussed backups for if McCallum pulls out of the project. We have also put together an effective creative pitch that brings the art of professional wrestling and the character of Ravie Davie to the forefront. It was then pitch time, and our pitch was literally the night after I got a wee selfie with Ravie Davie and was absolutely hungover to hell. We were pitching first at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'm up handing glow sticks with everyone to the crowd to shout, when I say Ravie, you say Davie, Ravie Davie, Ravie Davie, for our pitch, the Ravie Davie King of Govan. Went fairly well, we had wee slide, director Ryan Robertson, producer Bailey O'Donnell, cinematographer Cam Lucas Taylor, editor Ray Ferguson, a wee photo for the first time I ever saw him wrestle. Our logline has that photo of him with all the Waynes doing the John Cena, a documentary that explores professional wrestler Ravie Davie and the man beneath it, performer David McCallum, and how he uses his own life experiences living in Govan to craft both his character and change the reputation of the area that raised him. As for themes, we had a great picture that has the If Thatcher Wins We Riot, Davie winning the CPW title, community redemption, identity were our themes. We had a slide on Access, which was him in the Church of Wrestling holding the NWA World title. Location, the photo of him and his wife when they first got the church as a location. We had a mood board that had one of the posters that he styled off Avengers Endgame, little still from the Zidane documentary, shot from the Iron Claw, shot for the Polis and Burniston, bit of the British wrestler, a bit of Ravie Davie wrestling, bit of the wrestler, another couple of posters and just some fun antics, etc. And then had a wee proof of concept, which had a wrestling poster edited in the style of his, but it was myself, Rory, Bailey and Callum crudely edited on in the style of Mission Impossible. And that's what's happening, Trips, which is the final shot of our pitch, which had Ravie Davie celebrating with Caden Cross in the Church of Wrestling. Oh, how we didn't know. Then something else, which is a photo of me and Ravie Davie together, photo of Ravie Davie and a cameo, which was just insulting our lecturers, which went down an absolute treat, I think. Important meeting/tutorial notes. Here I will highlight different notes from meetings and highlight how we as a group responded to them and how it either shaped or altered our documentary. This is Bailey's notes from our meetings with Callum Rice, etc. Get back in contact with Davie, get a definite yes or no. This was from the first tutorial with Callum, and it was an in-between for our group. We all had agreed that Ravie Davie documentary is what we should do, and we reached out to Davie, and he said maybe. Callum encouraged us to reach back and get a definitive answer, which then led to us pursuing this documentary idea. Don't make him seem mad or crazy. He is a smart man. This was something Callum had said to us. I think it stuck with the group going down the road of trying to show the many different sides of the man. We want to try and steer clear of making him look mental. Instead, we can show that one side of him may be mental, but that actually underneath there is a smart man that has started his own business and does all this marketing to put his wrestling empire. Explore all sides of Davie: businessman, wrestler, dad, partner, teacher, etc. Again, like the last point we need to steer clear of just showing him this crazy wrestler. We need to dive deep in to see all the other sides of Davie and give them each chance to shine through the documentary. I think we did that well with our proof of concept, but we'll need to keep it in mind when we're making our show. Our shortlist, combined with another note from Callum that said focus on open questions rather than closed questions, will help us massively when we film. Make the film feel like the audience is in the ring. Ask David what it sounds like, feels like, and match that experience. This was a note from Callum that I think we're going to use for at least a little bit of our observational wrestling matches. It sounds more interesting than just filming it. Immersing the audience in the match may be slightly tricky, but I think if we pull it off, it could be great. Create an interesting and exciting scene in our film. Get a cameo from Davey to put at the end of the pitch. This was a suggestion from Ryan. That as a group we immediately loved and knew we had to do. I do personally feel this was not only a great idea and would play well on the pitch, but also showed Davey to the audience better than we could have done in a more interesting than just have the four of us be like, David is this, he is that, etc. For film, try and get a before and after Davey wrestling in the ring. Fly in the wall, Zidane doc for inspiration. These are two notes from Callum about the observational aspects of the film. I like the idea of getting an excited shot of Davey about to enter the ring and then following up with him afterwards, at least looking tired and possibly just injured to highlight what he goes through. But for the excitement he has, despite knowing the pain he may have to go through, we could provide entertainment. The Zidane doc, so something Callum was really wanting us to view for inspiration, and I believe we have taken inspiration from it, as it's very dramatic and exciting. We would like to emulate that for feeling for the audience. As a sample of some of the notes we responded to, there are more about such things, how the pitch looked with Callum's tells, which try and make it look as colourful as possible, which we took as our original pitch was in black and white. There were also notes from the practice pitch that we used to alter the pitch, suggesting we remove the slides for Govan and focus more on the real subject of the film and make images more geared towards what our film will look like. We did receive more notes and tutorials on these, but I feel these were the most important ones that really helped us shape and inform our documentary and the pitching process, and thus I decided to highlight them. On to Ryan's treatment. Dear God. This bit will have aged worst. Treatment. Title: Becoming Ravie Davie, the King of Govan. Director Ryan, producer Bailey, cinematographer Callum, editor Rory. Hook: ex-gang member has a wrestling school in his church to keep kids out of the Govan streets. Logline: a documentary that explores professional wrestler Ravie Davie and the man beneath the performer David McCallum, and how he uses his own life experiences living in Govan to craft both his wrestling character and change the reputation of the area that raised him. Subject. Our subject is professional wrestler, social media star, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and basically everything you ever wanted or needed David McCallum, better known as Ravie Davie. His story began at the age of 6 when his mother lost her battle with mental health and he began living with his nana. His nana gave him everything, but he struggled as a youth, a mix of ADHD and the environment he was raised in contributing. Wrestling was his safe space. His nana caught on and bought him the toys and took him to the shows, let him skyve the school to watch the pay-per-views. Wrestling kept him away from the gangs of Govan, of which he was heavily a part of, in and out of gang violence around Govan, going as far as being stabbed multiple times, in and out of youth detention facilities and prison. His nana, battling cancer herself, gave him a choice: clean up your act or I'm done looking after you. This led to David deciding to get into the wrestling training and working his ass off to become the best version of himself, and with it the social media profile launched. Unfortunately, his nana would pass away, this only making David want to make her proud as possible. After months of work, Ravie Davie was born. From that came a run in Scotland's top independent company, ICW, but eventually this led to David parting ways and opening his own wrestling school for age 5+ and creating his own company for the Govan community, CPW. For 3 years now, he's been helping the kids at Govan stay out of trouble, being a role model for them and creating a safe space. He and his partner recently converted the disused church into a wrestling school and have been running shows out of it. David has won awards for his youth work, appeared in the news to discuss youth violence, travelled to Japan to wrestle for a month and put on some of the best shows in recent Scottish memory. He's an inspiring story of redemption and a very strong role model. David McCallum, the man behind the persona of Ravie Davie, is a very smart businessman and workhorse, practically building everything he has himself and never being afraid from the hard work, working essentially 25/8 to the benefit of everybody else in the community. Setting: we have 3 settings to this story: Govan, the Church of Wrestling, and an unconfirmed wrestling show, which will likely be in a venue in Govan. Govan is where the entire story will take place. It is the place that shaped Ravie Davie, and we intend on showing this visually with footage from around Govan and places he remembers from his past. Govan is what we are going to use to link aspects of David's story together. It's our glue. We plan on going to places around Govan related to Davie's story, either with him if we get the chance or without, to create a sense of space and place. Ideally, we'll be able to capture footage of Govan that captures its reputation. We'll also plan to interview people in the streets of Govan about Ravie Davie. The Church of Wrestling is Davie's wrestling school, which is an old disused church. Davie and his partner George are safe and converted into a wrestling school for all ages, a safe space away from their reputation in the streets of Govan. We plan on shooting our interview with Davie in the building, as well as getting in his element training with the students. We plan on making good use of the church's environment as it's very cool and a unique place thematically for a wrestling school in his story. The wrestling show we intend to film at will likely be from within the church or at another venue in Govan and will allow us to show the fun, family-friendly, chaotic environment of a wrestling show on screen. All of these shots will be multiple camera shoots to allow for easier coverage of the large locations and unique angles to be captured during the show. Where are we? We are on Act 1. Our film will open on David talking about growing up in Govan, Ravie Davie's origin story essentially. We'll be asking David to go into elaborate detail about certain stories from his youth that led to him deciding to get out of the gang world and step into the wrestling world, picking one or combining a few to create a visceral, emotional opening to our film. It's important within the documentary medium to have a strong opening, and starting on a longer, detailed story with a strong buzzwords and emotion is always a good hook. We plan on shooting around Govan with David here, him taking us to places related to the story he is telling us to show the place that A made him and B essentially he serves. The story will likely involve discussions of his nana and gang violence. It will be given the tone and respect it deserves, leading to the tone shift that is David McCallum's formative years and becoming Ravie Davie. Act 2. The middle act of this film was shot at the Glasgow School of Wrestling inside the Church of Wrestling, focusing Ravie Davie as an inspiration to the kids from the community that crafted him. This section will open for almost an in-character monologue from Ravie Davie about one of the things that he does and how he manages to do it, full of jokes, full of character, full of archive footage, full of him doing all the many things he does. This is where the bulk of the interview about how he crafted the character of Ravie Davie will be, and what he's doing with the School of Wrestling will occur. We'll see him in and around the school interacting with various students and helping them come closer and closer to their dreams. We will hear Davie talking about his students and his students talking about David. We're considering having interviews with students and people inspired by Ravie Davie as part of our next act. But regardless, this is the footage we intend on filming. Act 3, we plan on ending our documentary with an observational scene filmed at one of Ravie Davie's community wrestling shows. This will follow David setting up the venue, doing the business stuff he has to do before the big show, coaching wrestlers about to perform, quietly warming up and getting into character, standing behind the curtain before busting out and doing his rap. Fully in character, performing in front of the crowd and wrestling during the match, following him to the back after, cooling down from the high he's on, watching him interact with the wrestlers backstage about the show, cleaning up after the show, still being there, still working away. This will be shot from multiple perspectives and angles. Sound design will be key here to highlight the importance and reactions and feelings we capture. We plan on having one camera follow him all day and getting close-ups being handheld, one camera set up capturing a wide shot of the entire event on a tripod, and another camera closer capturing the action, and one camera focused on the audience's reactions to what's happening. As much coverage of this event as possible will be a focus here on faces, feelings and personal moments of the people watching David and David himself. Voiceover here will be about the feeling of being in the ring, in front of the fans, the adrenaline, the moments he snaps out of the character, etc. Being a good guy despite his character of a Ned, ideally playing a bad guy. The blend between Ravie Davie and David McCallum. Here we may have crowd members' reactions and the reaction of David to these reactions, concluding with another montage of all the faces, all the hats of Ravie Davie. The style of this piece, much like the acts in this moment, are still being discussed. We have a lot of ideas and there's a lot we can do with the piece. What we know we want to do is to be a character exploration of the man under the hat, David, and who Ravie Davie is to him and the community. We want to explore the many faces of David and potentially by doing so match his vibe, creating a chaotic in and out of character, snapping, reflective piece, an ADHD feel to it. You never know what part of the story is going to come next, but it will be the right piece of information to be here in the moment. That's one idea for style, and we have at the moment it's being something truly complementary and unique to the character that is David portrays. Why? I've always wanted to make a short documentary on a wrestler, and the simple overdone idea to follow a wrestler preparing for a match with voiceover, get what they do, and then that's the groundwork for something better, unique and special, I reckon. For this class, I found my group, I gave forward to my group a wide selection of ideas, and a wrestler documentary was one of them. This became the favoured idea after I suggested Ravie Davie. Ravie Davie is one of the bigger names in Scottish wrestling right now, behind Grado and maybe Jack Jester. So pitching a documentary about him is absolutely reaching for the moon, and the joy I felt when I got the message saying he was up for it is unexplainable. I grew up in Kincaid, and Zulu as it goes by no means the worst place in the country, but as a place that has a reputation within here, a schemy place that shaped Ned culture in there. Whilst I was never in any trouble with gangs, violence, or the police, that was my all-round upbringing, and elements that did filter into who I was and am, dressed like a Ned to fit in, acted like a Ned to fit in, and often treated like a Ned because of it. A lot of folk knew a lot of folks I knew could have done with Ravie Davie like mentor in their life. I was lucky enough to have a fair few. Thank God I was anxiety-riddled recluse. Every 3 months I would go to Pro Wrestling Elite shows at the City Earth Town Hall in Ayr, and it was here I first encountered Ravie Davie. Was doing the same act he does now, but he'd been 10 years earlier before he got as big as he is. Just after he first started, to the degree he wasn't wrestling in the first year of shows, I saw merely the guy at the interview who would cut about getting over schemy Ned-like character by shilling raffle ticket sales. This was me at the wrestling scene, a guy who looked and acted like the folk that surrounded me in Kincaid, and this was quite inspiring because I could do that kind of thing, and this was before I knew anyone more of Ravie Davie's story. The first time I ever bought raffle tickets from him, he was hitting all his usual patter with Anthony Troops, encouraging kids to gamble, and you know what? Me and my cousin won that raffle, get front row seats to the next show, and at this very show I met Pete Dunne. Always got a buzz out of seeing Ravie Davie at these shows. Somehow this Ned character was a massive hit with the kids, and well, clearly still is. He understood something different in the business that allowed his career to end up where it is now, and he gambled on himself. The reason I want to make this documentary about Ravie Davie in particular is because what he represents a highly inspiring, personal, unique success story that I relate to. If Davie's school was about when I was younger, despite not directly being involved in gang violence, I'd have been there because of all the other benefits his classes, the fitness, the responsibility, the confidence, and the chance to fulfill a childhood dream. Thank you for reading this treatment. We then have Bailey's shooting schedule. Shoot day 1. Exterior outside of Church of Wrestling, gather shots of outside the church, B-roll. Interior Church of Wrestling, shots of inside the church, the ring, the posters, everything. Interior Church of Wrestling, David walking around the church. Interior Church of Wrestling ring, David warming up, hitting the ropes, shadow boxing, etc. Interior Church of Wrestling, David interview. End of shoot day 1. Shoot day 2, wrestling show. Capture as much footage of a wrestling show as possible. End of shoot day 2. Shoot day 3, interior David Church of Wrestling, Davie teaching wrestling class. Interior Church of Wrestling, interview with students. Interior Church of Wrestling, David wrestling with a student. End of shoot day 3. We then had creative notes to the directing group. During the production process, I gave Ryan, our director, many different creative notes and ideas for the film. Some of them he took on straight away, some of them I had to argue for him. For some, he just didn't see the vision, and I would admit some of them I was definitely not correct in pushing for. The first major one I can remember was suggestions that we make the film black and white. While I wanted to do this, I thought it was a nice symbol for exploring two sides of a person. Ryan didn't agree with it, and he wanted the film to be bright and colourful as possible. Now looking back on it, I completely agree. While black and white looks nice, I now think the black and white just wouldn't have matched the tone and style that we want to achieve with the film, and it would be in some way to lower the film's quality and make it less what it could be. Damn fucking right, Bailey. Sorry, what? Another note I gave was for the proof of concept, where in the middle there was this moment of silence where it seemed like Davie had returned after David's winning a wrestling match. He goes over and picks up a child. We believe it's his niece, but we aren't sure. I suggested making that the end of the proof of our concept, as it was a nice moment in reflection as soon as the match ended, and he was finally able to go back to himself. It instantly turns him into a family man rather than just this larger-of-life persona. I believe this was a good decision, and it made a very fitting finale, but also contrasts the start where he was shouting and dancing. Being interviewed, he has this moment to finally be himself. This is something I hope to apply to the final pitch. For the pitch, Ryan suggested passing out glow sticks to the audience to make it seem more like a rave than a pitch. The group was hesitant to do so, but I saw the vision behind it and decided to back him. I thought this would not only make our pitch more memorable with the audience and lectures, but also help with the tone and style of our film, a fun and out there documentary on a person that presents himself as this out there and fun wrestler. So, although I wasn't the one that suggested it, I'm glad we went along with it, and I think that during the final pitch the audience enjoyed it and did help our pitch more memorable. The final creative note that I can recall giving to Ryan and the group was suggesting that we look towards fictional films about wrestling to help inform our short documentary. The main one I suggested was looking at The Wrestler by Aronofsky 2008, specifically looking at the ending of the wrestling match. I think we should attempt to film at least a wrestling match in a cinematic style, perhaps even just that it is used to put over some of the interview. I think that this will create an interesting and nice visual for the film and highlight what Davie does in the ring. It will also likely make him look larger than life, and that's something I think is important to discuss in the film, is larger than life. I also had suggested looking at The Great Ecstasy of Woodker Steiner, Hergott's 1974, for the way it captures sort of sports ski jumper in this observational but also dreamlike style that heightens the sport. Also highlights the danger and the risk that comes with it. When injury happens, it feels scary and worrying. Something that I think could very well work when we go to film with Davie. We then have some comps from Bailey. Comp 1, Making MJF, short mockumentary. Early in the development of our pitch, we decided we wanted our film to be like this documentary. I had similar questions of where the wrestling character begins and the real person outside the ring begins. Although this does not follow more of a mockumentary approach, the way it's filmed, interviews with the wrestler and the people around him, the central question is something our group believes could be comparable to the film we wish to make. I think from this mockumentary we'll take the light and comedic tone in A Black Ravie with Davie. We'll also take the main, almost investigative approach, trying to uncover more about the man. Comp 2, The Great Ecstasy of Woodker Steiner, short documentary. This is a short film I recommended to Ryan, although I'm unsure if he remembers or if he watched it, about a ski jumper during a ski jumping competition. Bailey, I fucking don't remember that, of course I don't. I think it's compared to what our film is doing when Steiner, he jumps, it films him like we are members of the audience. It's very observational, and yet it's almost dreamlike. It heightens this already interesting action with music and camera work and editing. I think it's just something we should attempt to emulate or elevate our film to its highest level. I believe that from this film we could take the heightened observational style in a Platcher film where we just recalled Davie in a wrestling match. We already kind of did something like this with the final proof of concept shot, but it'll be a longer period for the actual film. Comp 3, Insane Fight Club, reality TV show / shock documentary. Perhaps the most important documentary will take inspiration from is Insane Fight Club, the BBC miniseries that follows wrestlers in Glasgow as they climb up the ranks of wrestling. This miniseries will inspire a lot of our film from the style and tone and themes and central character, which was putting Grado in the spotlight, something we hoped it would be Davie, not to make him famous, but to show him off to the audience. From this, we will take the light-hearted, fun approach to the Glasgow wrestling world and use it in our film. I feel like the film was almost like the Bible for how to create our film, as it really was the first media to highlight that fun Scottish Glasgow wrestling. And that is the end of our Ravie Davie pitch deck. I did not quite realise how long it would take me to read through everything we wrote and put into for that, but aye, that's basically a crash course in what the film was meant to be. And when it's eventually released, the Caden Cross documentary, you'll see that we very much stuck to that and just tweaked it and adapted it to suit Caden Cross, our new subject, and you'll be able to see our reflections upon it in due course. Thank you very much for listening to this part of our kind of my creative freeing exploration that I'm just throwing up on the Spotify because it might help some people. Thank you.